US forces had successfully landed on the Philippine island of Leyte on the 7th of October 1944. Leyte was important to the Japanese because it commanded sea routes to Borneo and Sumatra, by which rubber and petroleum were shipped to Japan. It had to be held at all costs. For General Douglas MacArthur, his landing fulfilled a promise he had made to the Filipino people when President Roosevelt had ordered him to leave in 1942 during the Japanese conquest. He had famously stated, "I will return," and return he did with the full might of the US Armed Forces 2.5 years later.
We rode some strange beasts into the landing. Amtraks, buffaloes, alligators, LCVPs. Rough riding, too. Didn't get saddle sore, but almost got seasick. Made our stomachs steadier, though, to see the rocket ships and the Air Force giving the Japs a go and all it. They called the place we came ashore White Beach. It wasn't quite so white when we left it. Leyte was no breeze. There was hard fighting. We had to smoke the enemy out of their holes like coyotes, but we smoked them out all right. The supply boys did great work hustling stuff to the firing line. We kept at them with rifle fire. Bazookas, rifle grenades.
If the Americans could capture enough of Leyte, they could carve out airfields whose aircraft could support US operations in all of the Philippines. General Tomoyuki Yamashita, the Japanese general who had defeated the British in Malaya and Singapore in 1942, now commanded in the Philippines, and he decided to make the Battle of Leyte the main battle for the archipelago. Huge Japanese reinforcements were shipped in, and many protracted battles were fought with US troops in Leyte's mountainous, jungle-covered interior. But the US advance continued doggedly against ferocious Japanese resistance. The series of ridges became infamous for the terrible battles that took place over them, often in torrential rain and seas of mud. Breakneck Ridge, Kilay Ridge, Shoestring Ridge. The Americans were trying to reach the island's capital, Ormoc. The Americans had established airfields that the Japanese were keen to capture for two reasons: hamper US air support for the ground troops, and forward deploy Japanese aircraft to support Japanese counter-offensives. On the 25th of October 1944, General Yamashita ordered a counterattack against the Americans on Leyte. It was to be a complicated and somewhat over-optimistic combined arms assault against the US-held airfields on the island. The Japanese realized that if they could capture the three main airfields, it would severely diminish US air power, enabling Japanese ground forces to even the odds in the ground battle. But how to capture the well-protected air bases? The offensive was divided into two operations. Lieutenant General Sosaku Suzuki, commanding the 35th Army, detailed two divisions, the 26th and 16th Infantry, to assault the airfields from hills to the west. This was codenamed Operation WWII by the Japanese. However, the Japanese had decided to use their dwindling force of transport aircraft to deliver a special raiding party to storm the three airfields from above. Operation Tay would witness the last significant use of Japanese paratroopers in the Pacific Campaign in a surprise attack. The 2nd Raiding Brigade, a commando-style Japanese army unit, would deploy its 3rd and 4th Raiding Regiments. The 3rd Regiment was in Japan and set sail aboard the aircraft carrier Junyo, arriving at Manila Bay on the 11th of November 1944. The same day, the headquarters of the 2nd Raiding Brigade was flown direct to Luzon in the Philippines. At the end of November, the 4th Raiding Regiment arrived by merchant ship. By early December 1944, the 2nd Raiding Brigade had assembled at Clark Field, Luzon, but to avoid detection, their transport aircraft stayed in Taiwan for the time being. On the 6th of December, Operation Tay was launched. 409 paratroopers boarded Ki-49 Helen and Ki-57 Topsy transport aircraft at airfields on Luzon. They flew southeast over Bacolod Airfield on Negros Island, rendezvoused with bombers and fighter escort, and then turned east for Leyte. At 6 p.m., transports approached from the west over eastern Leyte in clear weather. American anti-aircraft batteries did not open fire. They mistook the Japanese aircraft for C-47s. Two flights of Japanese transports came over San Pablo Airfield and Buri Airfield at 700 feet, and began disgorging hundreds of Japanese paratroopers over the American positions. The drop was scattered, several Japanese being killed in the jump when ripcords failed to function or they landed in trees. American soldiers ran around firing at the Japanese as they descended to earth, but at least 300 managed to land and go immediately into action, fighting in all directions. US pilots grabbed M1s and pistols to join the airfield defense troops and mechanics in slit trenches, fighting Japanese that were all over the airfields. Some liaison planes were destroyed by the Japanese, who also set supply dumps on fire, attacked bivouac areas and destroyed camps. Desperate for reinforcements, the US 674th Parachute Field Artillery Battalion was ordered to relieve the airfields. Leaving their artillery guns behind, the parachute gunners went into action as infantry on the 7th of December. The 674th pushed across Buri airstrip, fighting Japanese all the way. 700 yards north of the airstrip, they halted for the night in a coconut grove and dug in. On the 8th of December, the 1st Battalion 187th Airborne Infantry Regiment arrived to take over. US paratroopers versus Japanese paratroopers. Fierce fighting followed, but the Japanese were split into pockets without support and were progressively eliminated at both airfields. The remnants of the Japanese 16th Infantry Division continued its ground attacks on the airfields from the west. The 187th set up a perimeter around the station hospital and held off repeated Japanese attacks. On the 11th of December, a regiment from the 16th Division mounted a night counterattack, but was driven off with heavy losses. However, about 1,500 surviving Japanese made a surprise attack on Buri airfield through a swamp. They inflicted heavy casualties on US service troops before digging in. They were then wiped out by the 187th. In the end, the combined parachute and infantry assault made by the Japanese completely failed, with extremely heavy losses. Those Japanese paratroopers who survived took to the jungle and were hunted down by US forces and later by Filipino guerrillas. Operation Tay was the last hurrah of Japan's once formidable parachute force, and an action that did not seriously impede the American conquest of Leyte. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and share. Also visit my new audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.